You see, I came home from my Tuesday hiking group one afternoon. There was Michael on the couch in his pajamas at 2 p.m., scrolling on his phone. On the coffee table were the job applications I printed for him from the library, perfectly untouched. The sight hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent my career as an HR specialist fostering diligence. "This isn't a hotel, Michael," I said. He didn't even look up. That silent dismissal on the couch was the catalyst. I decided we needed a plan, a diligent, practical plan. I laid it out over Sheila's meatloaf. 30 days. He needed to get a job, any job, and start contributing to groceries. I presented it clearly, like a performance improvement plan. Sheila was quiet, pushing her food around her plate. Michael just nodded, his eyes down. He said, "Okay, Dad." No fire, no relief, no argument, just hollow acceptance. I mistook that silence for agreement. For the next 30 days, I watched the calendar like a supervisor, waiting for the initiative I was sure my plan would spark. Then, on the morning of day 31, a miracle. Michael had a job interview, a real one for a warehouse manager. He left in a borrowed tie, and I felt a surge of pride so sharp it brought tears to my eyes. My plan worked, I thought. The diligence, the structure, it had paid off. While he was out, I felt a grim certainty. I had to follow through. A deal was a deal. That certainty is what propelled me to the garage for boxes and to the hardware store. I was executing the plan. I packed his things, not angrily, but methodically, like closing a file. I put the boxes in the garage. Then I changed the locks. My hands were steady. In my mind, this wasn't cruelty. It was tough love. It was the final logical step. Sheila was at her sister's. The house was terribly quiet. I remember thinking, this will be the making of him. I waited by the front window, watching for his car, rehearsing my speech about standing on his own 2 feet. He came up the walk with a slight spring in his step. He'd been hopeful after the interview. He put his key in the lock. It didn't turn. He tried again. Then he saw me through the glass. I opened the door. I told him his things were in the garage, that it was time. He just stared at me, and I watched the light in his eyes, that little flare of hope from the interview, just snuff out. He didn't yell. He just said, "I see." He took his boxes from the garage, put them in his car, and drove away. I stood in the driveway, and the weight of what I'd done began to settle in the new silence. The house in Highland Park felt different, empty in a way it hadn't when he was just on the couch. Sheila mourned quietly. We didn't fight about it. The tension was worse than any argument. My hiking trails didn't bring peace. My stamp collection felt like a catalog of dead things. I'd been so focused on the principle, the what, that I blinded myself to the person, the who. Weeks later, driving with Sheila, she finally broke the silence about it. We were driving back from watching a movie, one of my hobbies that now felt like just filling time. Out of nowhere, Sheila said very softly, "We didn't save him, Paul. We just made him someone else's problem." It was like a punch to the chest. She wasn't accusing me. She was stating a fact that included her own guilt. That's when I truly understood. I hadn't managed a personnel issue. I had exiled my son. My practicality had become a form of abandonment. For 2 years there was only silence from Michael. Then my own body forced a reckoning. I had a health scare, a minor heart episode. Lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by my other kids and grandchildren, the absence was a physical pain. I realized I might die with this between us. So when I got home, I called him, not to explain my plan, but to apologize. I said, "Michael, I was wrong in how I did that. I treated you like a case, not my son. I am so sorry." That apology, specific and without excuse, was the first thread thrown across a 2-year chasm. That apology, specific and without excuse, was the first thread thrown across a 2-year chasm. He didn't say much on that first call, just, "Okay, Dad, thanks for saying that." But he didn't hang up. And a week later, he called me back. He asked about my heart, just a simple question. And that was the start. We reconciled. It's slow and it's different. He lives in an apartment in Canton now, works at that same warehouse. He did get the job, you see. He got it the day I locked him out. He'd been coming home to tell us he was hired. He never got to say it. He comes for dinner now, maybe once a month. Sheila cooks his favorite, pot roast, and the table feels a little more complete. We talk about normal things, the weather, a movie I saw, how his sister's kids are doing. The big thing, the wound, it's not in the room with us at the table. It's outside, waiting. We both know it's there. But we've agreed silently to let it be for now, to just be in the same room again. The lesson I learned too late is this: you can be right in principle and wrong in practice. I was an HR specialist for 43 years. My whole job was to identify problems, create plans, and follow procedures. If someone wasn't performing, you gave them a path to improve. And if they didn't, you let them go. It was clean. It was fair. It was for the good of the company. But my house in Highland Park wasn't a company, and Michael wasn't an employee. He was my son. And I applied my professional logic to my deepest personal failure. I diagnosed his despair as a performance issue. I gave him a 30-day performance improvement plan. And when he met the terms, when he got that job, I terminated his residency anyway. I followed my procedure right off a cliff. Here's what I didn't ask, not once in those 18 months. "Michael, what's hurting?" I was so busy asking, "What's your plan?" I was looking at the symptom, the unemployment, the inertia, and I never looked for the wound. The divorce had shattered him. Losing his job right after just confirmed every terrible thing he was starting to believe about himself. He wasn't lazy, he was drowning. And my tough love wasn't a life preserver. It was me standing on the shore, shouting instructions on how to swim. Sheila knew. She felt it in her mother's heart. That's why she was so quiet at that meatloaf dinner. She saw the hollow look in his eyes when I laid out my plan. She saw a boy who was lost, and I saw a man who wasn't trying. We were looking at the same person and seeing two completely different crises. After he left, after the silence settled in, I tried to go back to my normal life. I'd go hiking with the Tuesday group on the trails near the gorge. But instead of noticing the light through the leaves or the sound of the river, all I could think was, where is he sleeping tonight? I'd sit at my desk with my stamp albums, the ones I've kept since I was 10, filled with specimens from all over the world, and they just looked like little colored rectangles on paper. The story in each one was gone. My cheerfulness, it had been a kind of fuel, a belief that effort led to good outcomes. When my effort led to that moment at the door, the fuel ran out. What I understand now is that sometimes the most diligent thing you can do is stop trying to fix someone. Sometimes fixing isn't what they need. They just need a safe harbor, a place where the storm isn't coming inside, a place to be broken without someone handing them a timeline for repairs. I didn't offer him a harbor. I gave him a deadline. And in doing so, I failed him in the most basic way a father can. He's doing okay now. He really is. But he did it in spite of what I did, not because of it. He found his own way through the dark, and that's a testament to him, not to my plan. My pride in him now is a quiet, humbled thing. It has no right to be loud. So if you're in my shoes with an adult child who seems stuck, who's lying on your couch and breaking your heart with their inaction, I'm not saying have no boundaries. I'm not saying let the situation drift forever. But before you lay down the law, before you make your plan, just sit down next to them, not across from them like I did at the dinner table, next to them, on the same side, and maybe don't say anything for a minute, and then ask the only question that matters. Talk to me. What does it feel like in there? You might not get an answer, but you will have asked the right question. You might not get an answer, but you will have asked the right question. And that's more than I did. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was the noise inside my own head afterward. Every creak in that old Highland Park house was a judgment. Sheila and I, we moved around each other like ghosts. We'd been married for 58 years, raised 5 kids together. We'd never had a problem we couldn't talk through, until this one. Because how do you talk about the hole you both helped make? One night, about 6 months after he left, I was in my study. I'd pulled out one of my oldest stamp albums, the one from my own father. I was trying to find a distraction, anything to quiet my mind. Sheila came in. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, looking at the shelves of my albums, the framed pictures of our other kids, and the 3 grandkids. Then she said, "Paul." I looked up. "Do you remember when Michael was 7? He fell out of the maple tree in the backyard." I did remember. He'd broken his arm. A clean break, but he was scared and crying. "You remember what you did?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, not accusing, just remembering. "I carried him to the car," I said. "You did," she said. "But first you sat right there on the grass with him. You didn't rush. You held him and you let him cry it out against your shirt. You told him it was going to be okay, that we'd get it fixed, but that it was all right to be scared first. You just sat there in the grass and held him until the crying turned to hiccups. Then you carried him." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at the album in my lap. "That's what he needed this time," she said. "He just needed someone to sit in the grass with him first, to let him be scared." She left the room then, and I sat there in my chair, and for the first time since I changed the locks, I cried. Not a few tears. I broke. I put my head in my hands and sobbed like a child, because she was right. The man who had sat in the grass with his 7-year-old boy would have known what to do. The retired HR specialist only knew how to process a case. I'd been so proud of being practical, so sure that diligence was the highest virtue. But what is diligence without compassion? It's just procedure. It's just a checklist for a broken heart. I had applied all my professional skill to the one situation where it was the exact wrong tool for the job. The cost was in the empty chair at Thanksgiving. It was in the way my other children would call, and their conversations would be just a little too careful, avoiding the one subject we were all thinking about. It was in watching Sheila look at every passing car that sounded like Michael's old sedan, hoping it would turn into the driveway. It was the 2 years of birthdays and Christmases where the card I sent came back in the mail, marked return to sender. I had wanted him to be independent, and in the cruelest twist, my action is what finally forced a brutal, lonely kind of independence on him. He had to figure it out with no safety net at all. He told me later, during one of our first real talks after the hospital, that those first few months were the darkest of his life. He slept in his car for a week. He used the locker room at the warehouse to shower. He said the worst part wasn't the hardship. It was the feeling that his own father had seen him at his lowest, most broken point, and had responded not with a hand, but with a locked door. He said, "You made me feel like a problem to be solved, Dad. And when the solution was too messy, you just deleted the file." Hearing him say that, it broke me all over again, because that's exactly what I'd done. I'd treated my own son with the cold efficiency of a corporate downsizing. And here's the thing I have to live with. He did get the job. He got it that day. He was coming home to tell us he was hired, that he could start paying rent, that the plan was working. He had the offer in his pocket when he put his key in that lock. He'd done everything I'd asked, and I'd moved the goalposts on him without even knowing it. I was so committed to the punishment phase of my plan that I didn't wait to see if the reward phase had actually arrived. That's the regret that eats at me. Not just that I kicked him out, but that I kicked him out at the very moment he had, against all the odds he was facing, succeeded. I took his first real victory in years, and I turned it into his deepest defeat. I extinguished his hope right on the doorstep. That's what I lost. I lost my chance to be the one he shared that victory with. I lost my place as his safe landing. For 2 years, I lost my son, and I have to live with the knowledge that I did that. With steady hands and a clear conscience, I did that. It took my heart literally skipping a beat to shock me out of it, to make me see that being right was a cold comfort I'd be taking to my grave. That's when I finally picked up the phone, not as Paul Stewart, HR specialist, but as Dad. A failed one, but a dad who finally wanted to stop fixing and start listening. That apology, specific and without excuse, was the first thread thrown across a 2-year chasm, and I had to learn to just hold that thread, not try to pull him across it. That was the hardest part for a man like me, who'd spent a lifetime solving problems. I had to learn to just be, to be a father who was present in his regret without demanding forgiveness as the next step in the plan. Here's what I understand now, sitting in my living room in Highland Park at 82. I was an HR specialist. My entire professional identity was built on assessing performance, creating equitable structures, and following procedures to their logical end. It was a good career. It taught me diligence, fairness, a kind of practical cheerfulness. I brought those tools home. For raising 5 kids, for building a life with Sheila, for my hobbies, hiking requires preparation, stamp collecting requires organization. Those tools worked. Until they didn't. Until my son wasn't a system to be optimized, but a human being in profound pain. I diagnosed his depression as laziness. I mistook his despair for a lack of initiative. I saw the couch and the pajamas and the untouched applications, and I saw a performance issue. I never saw the man who felt he had nothing left to perform for. I applied a professional solution to a spiritual crisis, and in doing so, I failed him in the most fundamental way. I abandoned him at the precise moment he needed a father, not a manager. The specific mistake wasn't wanting him to be independent. Every parent wants that. The mistake was believing independence could be forced through withdrawal of shelter. You don't teach a bird to fly by burning the nest. You just leave it homeless and terrified. Michael needed to heal before he could build. I demanded he build while he was still in pieces. And when he miraculously, against the weight of his own brokenness, managed to secure a job, a victory I should have celebrated with him, I was already at the hardware store buying new locks. I was so committed to the consequence phase of my plan that I blinded myself to the success. I stole his moment of triumph and turned it into his deepest rejection. That's the regret I carry, not just the action, but its catastrophic timing. So if you're watching this and you're sitting where I was, maybe you're looking at your own child on a couch, or a sibling, or a friend who seems stuck. Hear me. Before you make a plan, make a space. A space for listening, not lecturing. Sit next to them, not across the table like it's a negotiation. Next to them on the same side. Ask, what does it feel like in there? You might not get an answer. That's okay. The question itself is a lifeline. It says, I see you're drowning. I'm not just shouting swimming lessons from the shore. Have boundaries, of course, but let them be fences, not walls. A fence says this is where my garden ends and yours begins, but I'm right here next door. A wall says you are on the other side and you cannot come in. My locked door was a wall. I should have built a fence, something like, you can stay here while you heal and we will help, but we need to see you trying to see a doctor for the wound. That's the difference. Address the hurt, not just the behavior stemming from it. You still have time. I didn't think I did. I thought at 80 time was a blunt instrument for delivering hard lessons. I was wrong. Time is the very thing that allows for mending, if you use it with humility instead of urgency. It took my heart literally stuttering in my chest to show me that. Don't wait for a health scare. Don't wait for the silence to become so loud it's all you can hear. If there's a chasm, however wide, throw a thread across. Just a simple, honest, no excuses. I was wrong about how I handled that. Then be quiet. Hold the thread. That's your job now. This channel, from what I understand, is a place for stories like mine. Real stories from people who've lived a long time and learned things the hard way. If my mistake, my regret, and this fragile reconciliation we're building means something to you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Maybe my story can save someone else the 2 years of silence I endured. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, have you ever been on either side of a locked door? Were you the one holding the new key or the one finding it didn't work? Your story matters. Sharing it might help you, and it will certainly help others who read it and feel less alone. If you found a bit of truth here, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to someone else who might need it tonight. And share it. Share it with a friend, a parent, an adult child. Not as ammunition, but as an invitation to talk. This made me think of us. Can we talk? If you have a story of your own, a lesson carved from regret, or a hard-won reconciliation, there's a form in the description. The folks who run this channel tell me they're always looking for real voices. Maybe yours could be next. Maybe you could be the one throwing a thread across a chasm for someone watching. A book that helped me long after the fact was The 4 Things That Matter Most by Ira Byock. It's about what we need to say before it's too late. I've left a link below. It's not an instruction manual, but it might give you a place to start. Don't be like me. Don't let your professionalism, your practicality, your diligent nature become a barrier to your humanity. Your family is not a department to be managed. Your love is not a performance plan. Be the safe harbor. Be the one who sits in the grass and holds them while they cry, before you ever try to fix the break. That's the job. That's the only job that matters.